Have you ever stopped to think about what the money in your pocket really is? Is it a digital number, a promise written on paper, or a great illusion that has continued since Mesopotamia? The answer may surprise you, because money is much older and much stranger than most people think. Money is not just a tool used to buy things. It is a system societies use to measure debt, organize labor, collect taxes, manage trust, and distribute power. That is why, to understand money, we have to go back before banks, before paper money, and before coins. Because it all began with clay tablets. When we think of money today, we usually think of banknotes, bank cards, or other digital methods. But the story of money did not begin that way. In ancient Mesopotamia, money was not a shiny coin people carried in their pockets, because coins did not exist yet. There were no banks, no paper money. And yet, people were borrowing, making payments, delivering goods, and organizing their labor within a system. So how did they keep track of all this? The answer was surprisingly simple: clay tablets. But these tablets were not just pieces of ancient writing. They were the economic memory of a society. Temples and palaces were not only places of worship or political rule. They were also major economic centers, where barley, silver, labor, debts, and payments were recorded. In today's world, a central bank, a tax office, and an accounting ledger help track the monetary order of society. In Mesopotamia, this record-keeping system played a similar role. How much barley did one person deliver? How many days did a worker labor? How much debt did a family owe? What payment had to be made to a temple or a palace? All of this had to be remembered, because as the economy grew, human memory was no longer enough. There were too many debts, goods, labor duties, and obligations for people to keep in their minds. That is why money was born first, not as an object people could hold, but as a relationship that had to be recorded, a sign showing what one person owed to another, a language for measuring the value of goods, a way for society to remember who gave what, who received what, and who still had something left to pay. So in Mesopotamia, money first appeared not on metal, but on clay. And this small detail matters a lot, because it shows us something important. From the very beginning, money was not simply a tool used to buy things. Money was a way to record trust, a way to make debt visible, and a way to preserve the economic order of society. That is why the birthplace of money was not a market stall. It was a recording table. It was the small marks pressed into a clay tablet. And perhaps the oldest secret of money was hidden right there. People did not first trust money. They first trusted records. So what do you think we trust today? Money itself, or the system that records it? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments, because this question is the key to understanding money's next great transformation. Then something changed. Money was no longer just a record stored on clay tablets. It began to turn into an object people could hold in their hands. One of the most important stages of this transformation took place in Lydia, in the lands of modern-day Turkey. Lydia was not an ordinary kingdom. It stood along the trade routes between East and West. Merchants, markets, mines, and different societies came closer together there. And this created a major problem. How could everyone trust the same metal? This is where the coin appeared, the first Lydian coins made of the electrum. What made them important was not only the metal inside them. It was the stamp on them, because that stamp was saying, "I guarantee the weight and value of this metal." In other words, a coin was an authority's signature pressed onto metal. A merchant no longer had to weigh the metal again and again in every exchange. He no longer had to ask each time, "Is this really valuable?" Because the stamp made trust faster. The trust that once existed as a record on clay tablets was now pressed onto metal in Lydia. And this small stamp began one of the greatest transformations in the history of money. Because money was no longer only about remembering debt. It was something people could hold, carry, and show to others as a sign of trust. But the real question was this: were people trusting the metal or the authority mark pressed onto it? As coins spread, trade was not the only thing that changed. States changed as well. Thanks to standardized money, soldiers' wages could be paid more regularly. Taxes became easier to calculate and more orderly to collect. Cities, markets, and armies became connected around the same language of money. Money made it easier for goods to change hands. But at the same time, it gave states a new power of organization. Because if a state could standardize money, it could collect taxes more easily, feed its army more regularly, and control the economic order more strongly. So the coin did not only speed up the market, it also strengthened the hand of the state. For centuries, people could touch money. They could weigh it and feel it in their hands. But in China, something very radical happened. Money did not have to be metal, because as trade expanded, carrying heavy metal money became a real burden. For large payments, people had to carry chests, bags, and kilos of metal. Paper money appeared as a new solution that made this weight lighter. But this was also a huge mental shift, because now the value of money no longer came from the metal inside it, but from the trust and authority behind it. But paper money was only the beginning. As trade began to cross cities and continents, money became even more invisible. Merchants did not want to carry gold, silver, or heavy money everywhere. Instead, bills of exchange, credit relationships, and bankers' ledgers came into play. These ledgers worked like the software of modern trust. They recorded who owed whom, who had to make which payment, and which promise was valid. Money was no longer just something people could hold in their hands. It was a network, a chain of promises, a relationship of trust moving between people who had never even seen each other. For a long time, the world tried to solve this problem of trust with gold. They wanted to connect money once again to something physical. Gold was like an anchor. It placed a limit on money. It told states, you cannot create as much money as you want. But as modern economies grew, as wars increased, and as the crises of the 20th century forced states to create more money, this anchor began to stretch. Eventually, money moved further and further away from gold. The anchor broke, and in the modern world, money began to work not because there was gold behind it, but because people, banks, and states believed in it. Today, money is often not born in a mint. In fact, it often does not even come from a printing press first. In the modern economy, a large part of money is created when banks give loans. A loan is opened, a new deposit appears in an account, and new money appears in the system. So in a way, even the money in your pocket is often connected to someone else's debt. That is why modern money is often born from a debt relationship. And this is where the story becomes interesting. Because at the very beginning, we said that money could be a record of debt. Today, thousands of years later, money is still created largely through debt. Now money is becoming even more abstract. Cards, mobile apps, stable coins, central bank digital currencies, blockchain records. But all of these have one thing in common. Money is becoming a record again. Only now, servers have replaced clay tablets. Bank databases have replaced temple ledgers. Numbers on a screen have replaced the coin. And in some systems, trust is beginning to depend not only on the state or the bank, but also on mathematical algorithms. So money has changed shape once again. But the question still remains in the same place. Why do people trust it? And more importantly, what will the next form of trust be? That is why money was never just money, it was memory, a record of debt, a signature of authority, a promise of trust. Clay tablets preserved the economic memory of societies. Coins accelerated markets and strengthened the hand of states. Paper money separated value from metal. Bankers' ledgers carried trust into invisible networks. Gold tried to place a physical limit on that trust, but eventually that anchor broke too. Today, money continues to live in screens, databases, and algorithms. Its form has changed, its weight has disappeared, but the real question has never disappeared. What do people trust? Metal, the state, banks, algorithms, or simply an invisible system that everyone believes in at the same time? Perhaps the real history of money is not the history of objects. It is the history of trust changing shape. And if history has shown us one thing, it is this: every time money changed, the world changed with it. So when the next transformation comes, who will control trust? If this video gave you a new perspective, don't forget to subscribe. History is filled with answers waiting to be discovered. I'll show you where to start looking.